Hello, everybody. Welcome to Out of Character. I'm your host, Default GM, and today is the third day of the hashtag My 30-Day World challenge. I keep adding challenge to it because it sounds weird to just call it My 30-Day World. Um, so we're on the third day. I did do the second one, but I didn't do a video for it. If people are interested, I can post up a video. But I wrote out my answer on the AbTab group. So if you're curious what this is or have no idea what this is, so the My 30-Day Challenge is actually a promotional challenge for the Kickstarter for A Deadman's Guide to Dragongrin, which is a setting book that's coming out for Dragongrin, that's being published by Absolute Tabletop. Um, so if you're interested in learning that, I'm going to link the book down below or the Kickstarter down below, and any video I do that's about this. I'll also link the image for the My 30-Day World Challenge, just in case you guys want to get into it yourselves. But all right, enough of that. What is the third question, and what is my answer? So the third question is, who is the most nefarious villain in your world? So this question is a little complicated because the only person that kind of fits the nefarious villain role in my world is the Immortal Emperor, at least in modern times. Sorry. So at least in modern times, the Immortal Emperor is probably the only one that fits that, but he's dead. Um, so it's eh, So the Immortal Emperor, the reason that he's kind of a complicated figure and doesn't necessarily fit into the mold of a true villain is because if you are human, or most humans, I should say, you were part of the Empire, you thought of him as a hero or like a god, a deity of some sort because of what he did for you. If you're any of the other races, he's he's an asshole. Like he enslaved your people, he conquered you, like he did a lot of terrible things. He experimented on people. If you were one of the few kingdoms, the human kingdoms, that did not sign up with the emperor when he first came to power, you also probably think of him as a villain. So again, like I said, it's not cut and dry. There's a lot of people who don't see him as a villain, and it's not because they're lackeys or cultists or followers, it's because he actually did good things for them. So just like to give like a little bit of context without going into too much detail, or unnecessary detail. So in my world, there was all the race. There are 7 races, and each one of those races are connected to a god. That is, with the exception of the humans. Humans and their goddess are not actually connected because their goddess didn't create them. The humans willingly worship her. Her name was Salvia. And through that connection, those who chose to worship Salvia gained her blessing, which gave them a connection to magic. All the other races, because they are naturally created from bits of their god, also gain a connection to magic, but humans are a little bit more diversified in what their connection to magic looks like. Salvia was killed somehow. Nobody really knows who killed her, if it was a god, if she just disappeared. Nobody knows. But one day she was just gone, and almost all the humans lost their connection to magic. Now, once this had, like, a few of them still do, that's somewhat a mystery, but once they lost their connection to magic, the other 6 races pounced on them and just started tearing away at the human lands, enslaving humans, the works, right? And the humans couldn't really do much about it because they had such low numbers, um, just as far as like magical population. And those that were magically sensitive were not capable of competing with the other races on that level. So their number one just wasn't enough of them, and they didn't have the raw magical power to compete with like the other races' magical artillery units. And the humans also weren't unified. So it was multiple kingdoms with, their 5 or 6 mages that were trying to put up with like an armada of Cedians or uh, like a Borikai, so on. So they just couldn't. So because the humans weren't unified, because the humans didn't have enough magical strength, they couldn't do anything. So out like here comes the Immortal Emperor. He comes out of nowhere. He rallies a bunch of kingdoms. He saves a few of them, and he introduces 3 new pieces of technology. He introduces the Magisters that are pretty much these mechanized suits of armor. Think like small mechs that humans can get into that immediately amplifies their connection to magic. So much so that none of the other races can actually go against them. It would take like an entire squadron of high-powered mages to take down one magister, right? So that gives them magical superiority on the field. The other thing that happens is he created slugs and launchers. So slugs are pretty much spells that are encased in this metal casing, and they can only be primed by somebody that is magically sensitive or through a launcher. So pretty much when you put a slug into a launcher, the launcher primes the slug and you can fire it. What that does is it turns every human being that is not magically sensitive into an instant spellcaster. As long as they have slugs and a launcher, any Joe Schmo can pick up a launcher, be pointed in the general direction of where they want to be shot at or where they should be shooting, and then fire the launcher. So not only did this created a huge influx in his military, but it also created the circumstance in which he could pump out new soldiers very quickly without having to train them, and each without having to train them very much. They didn't have to spend years and years and years and years and years at a mage school to learn how to manipulate magic. With this, all they needed to do is learn how to shoot, really. Learn how to pull the gun, maybe take it apart, put it back together, that kind of thing. And in a pinch, you didn't even need that. You just gave it to them and hoped that they shot what they were shooting, right? Um, so he had this huge influx of people that just came in. A lot of kingdoms signed on, which meant his army grew almost exponentially. And no other military, none of the other races had a military that could compete with like 1,000, a million of like an entire population of individuals who were all mages. No other race really had that. They had people that could use magic in a sense, but they weren't like full trained mages. But now you had like an entire force shooting fireballs at you, with like these giant tanks in the middle of the battlefield. And no one was able to get the magical superiority or advance or innovate enough fast enough to stop his progression. And so he pretty much took over the entire continent, reclaimed all the human lands. Any kingdom that didn't want to serve him came to heal. Like he wrecked everybody. Um, and he's a really big deal because not only did he take back the human lands, but he also enslaved all the non-humans. So if you were a non-human, instantly enslaved, um, and traded and sold. And the humans that were slaves, the humans that he freed, the humans that he helped reconquer their lands, were totally okay with it. Some of them might not have been, but the majority of humans were like, this is just how it is. They enslaved us, so we enslaved them. Um, and other people had tried to kill him, but there was a myth or a legend that he was the immortal king because it was impossible. There have been multiple assassination attempts on him, but it's said that not only was he magically sensitive, but he was magically sensitive in a way that no one had ever actually seen before. And no one thought that he could actually be killed. Um, so that's pretty much my Nefarious villain. And also, like I said, he's kind of like a modern villain because he's dead. It turned out he wasn't immortal. He was killed. His empire fractured after he died, and just led to this huge thing. But yeah, so hopefully that was interesting. That is who my nefarious villain is, and why he was the nefarious villain that he was, and why he's a little bit more complicated and not necessarily strictly a villain. Now, in the modern times, in the actual setting itself, there are plenty of people to choose as like a nefarious villain. But there is no single one of them that rises above the rest and is like, ooh, those guys are the assholes. Um, it's I like to play in a gray area. I like when people have um, reasonable goals. I like when like the villain is more of a utilitarian, right? So they're more of a I'll do what I have to serve the greater good, or I think what I'm doing is for the best. You know, like as you could probably see, I like Doctor Doom like characters where they're not doing it because they're like, I want to destroy the world. Ha 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 ha. I like villains who are more sensible than that. Villains who, when they do a plan or when you learn of their motives, you as a hero have to question whether or not it is right to take them down, right? Like what they are doing is for the greater good. So if I disrupt them, what happens? You know, like what is the alternative to what they are doing? And am I in the right place? So that's pretty much how it works for me, at least. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. If you guys, who's the most nefarious villain in your world and why? All right, guys. This has been Out of Character. I'm your host, The Faulty GM. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to see more, please subscribe for more. Peace.